If statements are really powerful, and we're about to see how they're even more powerful. So, if-else example. So, public static void main string args. So we might have a really simple example. So we have int num1 equals 25. So if num1 is less than 20, we want to print something out. System out println num1 is less than 20. And then just so that we know that something's happening and all is working well in the world, then we can say end, just like we did before. I'll go ahead and compile and save it. Save. Yay, all is good and well in the world. So if I run it, is 25 less than 20? Well, no. In some cases, I want a single if statement. That's it. I just simply say, if it's less than 20, then do this. And that's it. Very similar to an AC, so air conditioner. If the temperature is less than or greater than a certain temperature, then turn on. Otherwise, don't do anything. But sometimes we want to have choices. We want to say, if num1 is less than 20, then we want to do one thing, but if it's not, and that's where the else comes in, then we want to do something else. System out println. Now, this says num1 is less than 20. What's the opposite of less than 20? The opposite is not greater than 20. It's greater than or equal to 20. You got to make sure and have the equal part in there. If you look at a number graph, you'll find that it's if else doesn't include the equal, then it's not really an else. You'll leave out the number 20. But luckily, Java does all this for us. Whether we understand an if statement or an else statement or not, Java does. So what is it saying? It's saying if num1 is less than 20, print this out. But if it's not, the opposite, if it's greater or equal to 20, then print this out. That compiles great. And look, num1 is greater than or equal to 20. And so this is our basic if-else situation. There is another situation we might have. We might say if it's less than 20, but we might have another one. We might say else if num1 equals 20, and then we'll write something else out. And we'll say system out println num1 equals 20. There we go. And then else, if it's not equal to 20, then it runs this else. Now here's the most confusing part. What does this else correspond to? A good style is what I'm presenting to you right here. But in reality, this else and this else corresponds to this if right here. And so this else is really saying that it's not equal to 20. That's all it's really saying. But since there's the if, else if, and else, we have a nice system. So we're saying if num1 is less than 20, num1 is less than 20. Else, if it's equal to 20, we're going to say it's equal to 20. And if it's anything else, we're going to say num1 is greater than or equal to 20. Now we got to change this, so we're going to say it's greater than 20. There we go. Compile that. See how that goes. We run that. Hey, num1 is greater than 20. You're right. Let's change this to a 24. Let's see how it goes. Num1 is greater than 20. Okay, it still works. Let's change it to 20. Num1 equals 20. Really good. Let's say if we change that to 18. And then num1 is less than 20. Excellent. So it does in fact work each time. So the basics of everything is if statement, and then if statement is the basic, and then if you want to have the opposite of the if, you have an else, and then if you want to get really fancy, you can have an if, and else. And you can have as many else ifs as you want. So let's go through another example here. I'll comment all this out and go through just another basic one. So if num1 is, let's say if it's greater than 15, then I'm going to have system out println hi George. There we go. And then I have all this white space. I really don't need it. And it doesn't matter if I have it or not. Java compiler doesn't care. And then we'll have an else here. Else system out println by George. And if your name happens to be George, then hello or goodbye. Let's see here. Which one? If 18 is greater than 15, what could that be? Aha! Hi, George. One thing I'd like to point out is these curly braces. If you have a curly brace, then you can have, so with, move this, curly braces, you can have 0 to infinity statements. So for example, I can completely take this out, so I have 0 statements and nothing prints out at all. Or I can have just millions and millions of lines of code inside this if statement. Now, if I take out the curly braces, just like that, then would be consistent without curly braces, one statement. That's it. So if we don't have the curly braces, you can only have one statement after it. In this class, because it is an introductory class, I suggest you always have a curly brace, even if you only have one statement. Because at this point, you're just getting used to it, so might as well just do that always have curly braces, whether you have 1 or 1,000 statements inside the if statement. So let's review a little bit. We have an if, and then you can have an else. The else is optional, so that's optional. Optional. If you have an else, you have to have an if. But if you have an if, you do not have to have an else. And then, of course, you can also have if, else if, and then finally a last else. And that's it.